Welcome to the Rockbridge Report Newsmaker. I'm Ned Newton. My guest today is Mr. Joshua Elrod. Mr. Elrod has been the Commonwealth's attorney in Buena Vista since 2019. He's the chief prosecutor for felonies and misdemeanors charged in Buena Vista. Mr. Elrod, what is the most prevalent crime you see in Buena Vista?
I think the biggest crime, probably both by the numbers and by the impact, is related to methamphetamine, so a drug crime. And right now, far and away, methamphetamine is the most prevalent drug that we're interdicting and seeing on both the possession and distribution level.
Is recidivism a problem in Buena Vista?
Recidivism is a problem. It is somewhat compartmentalized depending on what the crime is, but drug usage and drug distribution are crimes obviously really closely interwoven with addiction, and addiction, is something that repeats itself and is pernicious in that sense, and so recidivism in those areas is a pretty big problem.
So you'd say recidivism is the number one, drug addiction is the number one cause of recidivism then?
The crime of either drug possession and to some extent drug distribution is the area where we probably have the most problem with recidivism, I think because of the nature of drug use and the kind of interrelation between addiction and criminal behavior. So yes, that's definitely an area where we have the worst recidivism.
Have you seen recidivism get worse in your time?
It's a little hard to say in the sense that I'm right there at ground level, and I've been there, I guess, going on 4 years. It'll be 4 years July of 2023. And so when I first came to Buena Vista, you start to see cases, and although you might look at a criminal history and see that somebody's been through the system before, there's no kind of personal connection, and there's not the immediate recognition of seeing somebody whose cases we've dealt with before. Now that I've been there 4 years, I'm definitely starting on my second and sometimes third prosecution of the same individual. So from my perspective, yeah, recidivism seems to be getting worse. I think probably, though, that on an objective basis, it's not necessarily getting worse than it's been. I think it's been a pretty steady state, and I think the numbers bear that out. I know that the Virginia Department of Corrections recently released their recidivism figures. These are always a little bit backward looking. I think these are through 2018, but they show it dropping just a little bit, and Virginia actually being on the lower end of states in terms of, on the whole, the problem of repeat offenses.
What do you think the impact is of recidivism in the community?
I think in one sense, what I would point out is problematic about it, in addition to the obvious, that you have somebody and you're expending time or energy on prosecuting them and then, crafting a sentence that in part at least is supposed to produce some rehabilitation. Part of the problem is that I think that it induces some cynicism in the community about the criminal justice system, about the efficacy of treatment, about how effective anything is really. And it can lead people at some point to throw up their hands and say, the only thing we can really do is put people in jail for a long period of time, because that's the only way we're going to be sure about the outcome. And I won't say that there's never a call for long sentences. Sometimes there certainly is. But from somebody who's kind of at arm's length with the criminal justice system, that's an easier conclusion to reach than I think the people who are involved who see more of the complexity that's going on.
So as someone involved who does see that complexity, what impact do you think recidivism has on the criminal justice system?
Well, it means that people gain a familiarity with both the kind of punitive side of criminal justice. Somebody's been to jail before. They've been to prison before. Some of the shock value is gone. And maybe they've even integrated a little of that into sort of a normal part of their life. So it loses some effect. At the same time, maybe the only positive is you get multiple shots at trying different methods, different kind of treatment programs or diversionary programs to try to get somebody out of the cycle of either drug abuse or criminal behavior.
To get somebody out of that cycle of drug abuse, do you think decriminalization of certain kinds of drugs would be something favorable for the community?
I think it depends on the drug, and obviously we're going through this right now with marijuana. I think the legislature, as we speak, is kind of debating how they want to move on from the efforts that were started a few years ago to first decriminalize, originally with a view toward, I think, broad legalization. Now maybe that's been walked back, and I think they're trying to figure out what to do with it. And marijuana is not as difficult a drug to deal with, and I think the decriminalization of marijuana was probably, on the whole, a good thing. It's going to take some time to see exactly how that plays out, and it brings new challenges. It's harder to detect, for instance, at a traffic stop if somebody's under the influence of marijuana, but maybe equally or even more dangerous than somebody being under the influence of alcohol. So we have those kind of challenges. But if you looked at something like heroin, fentanyl, which we're certainly starting to see more of, or methamphetamine, I don't think there's any safe level. And certainly I don't think complete decriminalization makes sense. With that said, what our office tries to do, and I think other offices in the Commonwealth, is try to do some initial triage of somebody who comes into our system for possession of even those really serious drugs, and figure out if treatment is a good option for them. Because where it works, it might be more effective for the community, keep the community safer, do more to reduce the population of people who are actively using those illegal substances, and in the end, save taxpayer money.
Do you think a drug court would work?
I have been a proponent of drug courts since really before I ran my first campaign in Buena Vista, and a part of me would still very much like to see one there. The difficulty has been figuring out how to scale a drug court to our small municipality where we only have a circuit court that meets a couple of times a month. It's something we're still actively pursuing, and in the meantime, what we've tried to do is take some of the better components, what we think are the more effective parts of drug court, and try to implement those without a formal drug court.
Are there enough drug and alcohol abuse rehab facilities in this area, would you say?
No. And I think that's something else that the legislature's grappling with a little bit. You can kind of lump that in together with mental health services. The two are sometimes also intertwined. And I think there's a recognition that we don't have a good comprehensive system to treat people who have mental health or substance abuse issues. And if I had 3 wishes or a magic wand, I would say that anybody who wants drug treatment or anybody who needs drug treatment and is court ordered, would be able to walk into a first-class facility staffed by, well-trained, well-motivated professionals to treat them, and that they could stay there as long as the professionals would say treatment is advisable. But we're severely limited by funding, and like a lot of other healthcare in our country, it's a patchwork of private pay, private insurance, Medicaid, and then what is either funded through charitable organizations or state funded.
Well, it looks like we're out of time. I want to thank you, Mr. Elrod, for coming in today. For the Rockbridge Report, I'm Ned Newton. Thanks for watching.